Hey guys, it's Dawn, and today we're going to be going over my tentative TBR for March. To make things easy for you, I am including timestamps for each book down in the description so you can skip ones you're not as interested in. I also want to mention that there are some construction noises outside. I'm not sure if my camera will pick them up, but if it does, I apologize. So let's talk about my TBR. As always, we're going to start with my fantasy picks because that's the majority of what I read. My first pick for March is an urban fantasy, The Last Smile in Sunder City by Luke Arnold. And I actually want to read the blurb on the back. I don't usually do this, but I thought it was just very telling for what kind of narrator you're getting in this book and just kind of his snarky attitude, and kind of sets the tone for the story. Welcome to Sunder City. The magic is gone, but the monsters remain. I'm Fetch Phillips, just like it says on the window. There are a few things you should know before you hire me. 1, sobriety costs extra. 2, my services are confidential. 3, I don't work for humans. It's nothing personal, I'm a human myself, but after what happened to the magic, it's not the humans who need my help. So on the surface, it sounds like just a very basic urban fantasy detective noir sort of story, but I like the sound of the character's voice, and based on the blurb I found on like Goodreads and online, it basically describes him as like kind of a grumpy veteran, which that's the type of character that I have written frequently. That's how I would describe Finnegan from my own urban fantasy series. So I was really excited to meet this character and kind of get to know him. The world sounds like, basically based off of this description, that there used to be magic and for some reason it's gone, but the monsters are still there, and so he's helping the monsters because the magic is gone. And I guess that's making it hard for them somehow. So I don't know much beyond that, but I am excited to read this story. Next, continuing with urban fantasy, I have Rosemary and Rue by Shannon McGuire. So this one, okay, ma'am, would you not, please? So this one is once again kind of along that line of the typical urban fantasy. It's a first-person, single point of view story that's sort of detective-y or bounty hunter-y, if that makes sense. That's really typical with a lot of urban fantasy. But this main character is a changeling, which is a half human, half fae mix. So our main character, October, has chosen to kind of stick with the human side of her life. So she's in the human world just trying to live a normal life. And then something happens in the fairy world where I guess a queen in the San Francisco Bay Area, which is interesting, is killed. And so she's kind of forced into dealing with the Fae again, even though she's tried to avoid it. I have tried to read this story once before on ebook loan from my library, but I just really struggle with ebooks, especially in the past. I'm a little better now. I had trouble reading it, and then the loan expired, so I didn't end up finishing it. So I found this copy at the thrift store for 75 cents, which I thought was a good deal for a very nice copy of this book, and I'm excited to give it a try. Next, we have a book that I have mentioned multiple times in my previous videos. It is The Lies of Loch Lamora by Scott Lynch. So this one's starting to get on my nerves because it is the last new book that I bought in 2020 that I haven't read. So it's just sort of this glaring thing on my bookshelf that I feel like I need to get to, and I don't know why it's been so difficult to get to it. I picked it up on the recommendation of Murphy Napier, whose channel I really love. I trust her opinion. I've read things that she's recommended before and had success with them, so I do trust her opinion. I just don't know why it's taking me so long to pick this one up. So I'm trying to make it a priority this month. Like, the concept intrigues me. It's basically like this thieves guild. The main character is part of it. He was an orphan that was raised up as a thief. And so it's sort of an anti-hero kind of story where, you know, he's kind of a guy on the edges of society, and then he gets pulled into something bigger and has to be a good guy, is what it sounds like to me. So I'm intrigued to try it out, especially just because Murphy Napier loves it so much, and hopefully I will finally get to it in March. Next, we have one that isn't a huge surprise. It is Dead House Gates by Steven Erikson, which is the second book in Malazan, Book of the Fallen. Loved the first one. I'm both excited and nervous to jump into the second one. The way I understand it is it has a completely different cast of characters than the first book, which is kind of a bummer because I love those characters. I really enjoyed reading about them, but I'm going to trust Erikson that he knows what he is doing, or he knew what he was doing, and that I'm going to enjoy this one as well. So we will see. My last fantasy pick for March is The Crown's Game by Evelyn Skye. So this is the only YA pick in my TBR this month. The reason I picked this up, if it's not obvious from the cover, is because it's Eastern European inspired fantasy, specifically Russian. So the way I understand the premise is that there's two main characters, a girl and a guy. I don't remember their names from the blurb, but they are both magically gifted, and the Tsar needs a champion of sorts, so they're both going to compete, is what I understand. So it's kind of a typical YA competition story. It sounds like there's a love triangle in it, just based on what I read on the blurb, which I'm not a fan of, but I understand that it's just popular to use that in YA, so hopefully it won't be too annoying. But I'm gonna give it a try and see if I like it. But yeah, literally I picked it up because I saw the cover and was like, ooh, Russia, oh. I'm a very simple person, all right? Okay, that wraps it up with fantasy. I have 3 more books I want to talk about that are, I think, kind of all over the place. The first one is Things Fall Apart by Chinchua Achebe. I probably mispronounced that. Please forgive me. I'm an English speaker and a Russian speaker. That's kind of the limit of my linguistic skills. I'm not sure if this one is classified as strictly historical fiction or if it's considered literary fiction. I'm fairly certain it's considered literary fiction, but it is a very famous one. It's pretty much, as far as I understand it, the most well-known piece of fiction out of Africa, or at least most well-known in the West. So I wanted to try it out since it seemed like it was such a well-known and well-respected piece. The premise is basically that our main character, who I think he's an important figure in his tribe, something happens that kind of undermines that or causes some issues with that. So he's dealing with some problems in his tribe. And then the secondary thing that happens is that European missionaries come over, and that, of course, has its own issues. So it's kind of these two different struggles that collide for this guy, and just kind of how he goes through it all. So I'm very intrigued to read it. It will probably be the most challenging read of the month, I'm guessing, just because it's, it's literary fiction. It's very different from anything I've ever read, but I'm excited to read it. So hopefully it'll be a good one. Next, we have a historical fiction, which is Winter Sky by Chris Stewart. This is another one of those cases of Eastern European architecture pulling me in. In this case, it is a historical fiction set in Poland during World War II. I think it's towards the end of the war, but our main character is a Polish resistance fighter who has a bout of amnesia after an injury. I've heard people say that amnesia is a bad trope or an overused trope. I haven't run into it that often, so I'm not too worried about how I'm going to feel about it. But basically, all he has is a photograph of a woman holding a child's hand, and he's trying to figure out who the woman is, if it's his mother, whoever. And so he has all these things happen along his way of trying to figure out who he is, get out of Poland because he's trying to escape the Germans because he is a resistance fighter. And so he meets a bunch of different people, action happens, all these sort of things is what the blurb indicated. So I'm excited to read it. I am Polish on my mother's side, so I do love Poland and I love Polish history, so I'm excited to read it. I have not read anything by this author before, so it'll be interesting to see if I like his style and if I want to try something else by him. But yeah, that is Winter Sky. Last but not least, we have a thriller, Cold as Ice by Stephanie Black. I have read one book by Stephanie Black before, Mind Games, which is actually the second book she wrote featuring a character called Natalie Marsh, and I really enjoyed it. I thought her writing was really strong for coming from a small press, so I wanted to try out another book from her. So this is a different main character. I don't remember the main character's name, but the premise of the story is that for the past 5 years, our main character has been working hard to help her estranged brother work through some drug issues and some other personal issues to kind of reintegrate himself into the family and fix their relationship problems. And so they finally are making some progress, and then all of a sudden somebody, I think a woman in their neighborhood, is found murdered, and the police immediately blame her brother. And he's very overwhelmed. He runs away because he can't handle it and he doesn't want to face the police. And so she's kind of left trying to pick up the pieces and put the mystery together because she doesn't think that her brother did it. I was pulled in by the estranged brother concept. I don't know why, it just interested me, so I'm very excited to give this one a read. That entire last sentence, I had a sneeze building in my nose and I kept trying to talk faster and faster so that I could get through my thought before I sneezed. And I was successful. Good job, me. So that is my tentative TBR for March. I didn't include a couple ebooks I might throw in just because they're much more up in the air than this stuff, and I am trying to prioritize my physical collection over library books and ebooks and all that kind of stuff. So hopefully I will get to all of these. I wouldn't be surprised, of course, if some other ones sneak in here and bump some of these out. This is kind of what happens with me since I'm a mood reader. It's just the nature of the game. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know if you've read any of the books I mentioned, and let me know some spoiler-free thoughts down in the comments if you feel like it. If you want to see more writing and reading related content from me, specifically focused on adult speculative fiction, be sure to subscribe to my channel for more videos. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you have an amazing week, and as always, happy reading. Bye!